town hall protests. Republican lawmakers face fierce foes nationwide. Calming fears, administration's officials fly to Mexico to talk immigration and the wall. Dirty Dozen, the annual list of well-known companies that reportedly profit from sexual exploitation. And a feast day for a chair, the importance of the throne of St. Peter. On EWTN News Nightly for Wednesday, February 22nd, 2017. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you to those of you joining us from around the world for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Lauren Ashburn. President Donald Trump is sending his top diplomat and Homeland Security chief across the border to strengthen his ties with Mexico. The president's policies on immigration, border security, and construction of a wall have raised some tension, a high not seen in decades. Correspondent Wyatt Goolsbee reports from the White House. Wyatt.
Lauren, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson and Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly will have a lot on their plate when they meet with the president of Mexico. Chief among them, immigration. But the White House hopes those talks will be constructive, and President Trump's immigration policies have many in Mexico worried.
Armed with marching orders from President Trump, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson leaves the White House, heading to Mexico City. Tillerson and Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly will discuss border security and trade with the Mexican president, Enrique Peña Nieto.
I think the relationship with Mexico is phenomenal right now, and I think there's an unbelievable and robust dialogue between our two nations.
White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer optimistic the talks will bear fruit, but they come at a frosty time in America's relationship with Mexico. President Trump tweeting last month, Mexico has taken advantage of the U.S. for long enough. Massive trade deficits and little help on the very weak border must change now. That prompted Mexican President Peña Nieto to cancel a planned meeting with Trump. Spicer promises the Tillerson-Kelly visit will lay out the president's plan to crack down on illegal immigration.
The president is very clear about his priorities with respect to immigration. Yesterday was focused on going after people who are a concern, a public safety concern.
And along the border, lawmakers in his party see the proposed wall as key to protecting the country.
We have to measure all of the costs, ancillary and otherwise, and make the best decision that we can. But I can suggest to you that there are national security implications here for a porous border.
Officials in Mexico will likely bring up their problems with the two immigration enforcement memos issued yesterday by the Department of Homeland Security. Those memos call for sending some illegal immigrants back to Mexico, even if they're not from Mexico, but use the country as a transit point from Central America. The Mexican government is concerned it will lead to an overflow of refugees, which they simply can't handle. Lauren?
Why, President Trump has also talked about making better deals with Mexico. What do we know about their talks on trade?
Well, Lauren, Secretary Tillerson will likely face questions about Trump's pledge to renegotiate NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement. The president has talked about the idea of a border tax on Mexican products, but the White House has not said exactly what that would entail. Likely that's one of the topics they'll hammer out with Mexico tomorrow. Lauren?
Okay, Wyatt Goolsbee reporting from the White House. Thank you, Wyatt. President Trump is blaming liberal activists for protests at Republican town halls across the country. Iowa Senator Joni Ernst drowned out jeers following her all the way out of her town hall.
Shame on you! Shame on you!
Republicans across the country are defending the president's policies in packed town halls in their home districts. In California, Congressman Tom McClintock.
We don't know the financial relationships that Trump may have with Moscow. So does he want to build a hotel there? We don't know.
In Virginia, Congressman Dave Bratt's town hall. He faced off on immigration.
He didn't ban immigrants. He only banned immigrants from countries that are either state sponsors of terror or that don't have...
That's not true, sir. That's not true, sir.
Just a snapshot of one day of voter outrage, prompting the president to tweet. The so-called angry crowds in home districts of some Republicans are actually, in numerous cases, planned out by liberal activists. Sad. A group of former Democratic congressional aides admit they released a step-by-step manual to oppose the Trump administration.
If you can answer any of that, I'll sit down and shut up like Elizabeth Warren.
I hope you feel better now.
Some lawmakers canceled town halls this week, citing security concerns, only to see protesters show up outside of their district offices or post pictures mocking them, like a missing poster for Congressman Darrell Issa and Congressman Paul Cook's picture on milk jugs. And there has been some controversy surrounding this year's Conservative Political Action Conference, where the who's who of the right meet to exchange ideas on policy and strategy. Joining us now from the conference is Matt Schlapp, our friend and the chairman of the American Conservative Union, which runs the event. Matt, you know, it always hasn't been an easy relationship between the president and conservatives, not the case now, but what do you think conservatives want to hear from him this year?
I think that conservatives they're in a fighting mood for sure. They want to take their country back and get the government back on track. But I also think they're in a practical mood. They want to know specifically, what are we going to do on health care? What are we going to do on lowering taxes? What are we going to do to get this economy rolling again? What are we going to do on religious freedom? These are the questions that, and many others, that conservatives want a little more detail on. But first of all, Lauren, just remember, we haven't had a Republican president in their first year come to CPAC since 1981. This is a big moment.
It is a big coup for you, definitely. Now, you disinvited Milo Yiannopoulos. I'm sure you're tired of talking about this, the former
Yes.
Breitbart editor, after a video emerged of him discussing inappropriate sexual content. He typically incites controversy, which is probably why you invited him. But why did you cancel?
I didn't invite him because of controversy. I invited him because oftentimes on campus, conservative voices are quelled, and Milo's voice has been quelled, and a lot of other conservative voices have been quelled, especially in state universities. And so that's why we invited him, to specifically talk about that topic. And we disinvited him because we thought the videos that emerged with him having very inappropriate talk were well over the line, and we thought it was now his job to rehabilitate his image. It wasn't CPAC's job.
The convention, though, isn't just about big speakers. You also run an activism boot camp on everything from Facebook tips to Oppo research. Tell me, what are the most important tools conservative leaders need today?
Well, that's going on as we speak on the other end of the hallway, Lauren. And I think what conservative activists want to know is what will actually make them better activists in their communities. So I think it's partly social media. It's how do you engage elected officials. It's how do you convince your neighbors. The one thing we've realized is that the media, the dominant forces of the mainstream media have been busted open, which is a wonderful thing. And people are watching shows like yours. They're going to the shows that they trust to get their news, and that's a good thing. But people are also listening to their neighbors and their friends a lot more than they are listening to the person reading the news on CBS or ABC. And this is a positive thing, and conservatives can make a real impact just by being knowledgeable, friendly, and asking people to listen to our point of view.
One of the things that we were looking for on your agenda were some talks about faith. What role does faith play in the conservative agenda? We do have a lot of people here at News Nightly who are watching because they're interested in how faith and politics intersect.
Well, since I've been chair of the ACU, we have tried very aggressively to insert the concept that it's God who made each individual and who gave him the rights that each citizen has, right? And this is a theme that flows through actually all of our topics. And we believe that the conservative coalition, yes, it exists. It consists of people who want to see the government get smaller and taxes to be lower. And yes, it exists for people who want to make sure we have a strong national defense. But it also, a very important part of that coalition are people of faith and strong families and strong culture. And we have projects and programs focused on that.
Great.
And I know that our attendees will hear about that throughout all 3 days of the conference.
Well, I will be there tomorrow, and I look forward to seeing you. Matt Schlapp, chairman of the American Conservative Union, thank you for joining us. And stay with EWTN News Nightly tomorrow and Friday for CPAC coverage from a Catholic perspective. We'll have reports and interviews both days. We'll also have behind-the-scenes pictures and videos on our Facebook and Twitter pages. Sources tell the Associated Press that the Trump administration will revoke federal guidelines implemented last year by President Obama. And those guidelines say public schools need to let transgender students use bathrooms of their choice. White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer yesterday reaffirmed the president's stance on the issue.
The president has maintained for a long time that this is a states' rights issue and not one for the federal government. So while there will be further guidance coming out on this, I think that all you have to do is look at what the president's view has been for a long time.
Legal experts say the change could impact pending court cases, including a case set to be heard by the Supreme Court. Other stories our EWTN News Nightly team is covering in today's world. The fight for control of Iraq's second largest city turns west. Mark Irons reports from the Pentagon.
Lauren, Iraqi forces make a new push west of Mosul to capture villages under ISIS control. They've already pushed out ISIS militants from the eastern half of the city. A spokesman with the Iraqi militia says 3 Iraqi fighters have died in the latest round of fighting. 14 have been injured. Meanwhile, 17 ISIS fighters are reported dead. Today, Air Force Colonel John Dorian gave a briefing at the Pentagon via live feed from Baghdad. I asked him what U.S. forces are doing to help persecuted Christians in Iraq and Syria.
What we are here to do is to assist the Iraqi security forces in defeating ISIL. And ISIL is probably the number one persecutor of anyone that doesn't follow their ideology, including Christians.
The last ISIS urban stronghold in Iraq is the city of Mosul. Colonel Dorian said he does expect a very tough fight in the western half of the city, but the area ISIS controls is shrinking daily. Lauren?
Mark Irons, thank you very much. Investigators say the 2 women suspected of killing the North Korean leader's brother had been trained to attack. Malaysian police say the women knew how to coat their hands with toxic chemicals and wipe them on Kim Jong-nam's face. At least one of the women said she was tricked into the attack, but authorities don't buy the claim, saying they practiced that attack several times. More than 600 migrants, including 70 women and children, are rescued in the central Mediterranean Sea. The Italian Coast Guard discovered the group on a fishing boat trying to reach the coast of Europe. They were transferred to a ship which then sailed back to port. Pope Francis makes an appeal for people who are starving in South Sudan, unable to get aid because of an ongoing conflict. The Holy Father told pilgrims at today's general audience it is more necessary than ever for everyone to help so that food can reach people in need. Vatican correspondent Mary Shevlin reports from Rome.
The Holy Father's appeal at the end of today's audience for peace and for famine that's striking South Sudan. He said he was praying that food assistance, food aid would be able to reach what he mentioned as the millions of people who are suffering starvation and famine because of the war that has been raging there for years. He said, may this fratricide come to an end and the people that are literally starving may get the assistance we need. He said the time for words is over. It's now time for action.
What did Pope Francis say about how we should care for creation?
Pope Francis said sometimes we are tempted to think of creation as our own possession, but that he said through sin, as we ourselves are stained and marked through sin, when we look around us, we can see that creation itself is stained with the pride of human greed that makes use of the earth for their own economical gain.
How is Pope Francis linking this call to care for creation with the virtue of hope?
Pope Francis said when we do look around us, we can see signs of hope, signs of a new creation. Even though this world is stained by sin and we can see marks of our greed on creation, as he mentioned, we also have the hope in our hearts that what we see around us also points to our Creator, to signs of a new creation. And as he mentioned in the reading he cited by St. Paul, all of creation groans, as the Bible says, as we await the promise of a new life, the life to come.
He also listed qualities of what we as Christians should have. What are they?
Pope Francis said, as Christians, we are to live in the world but not be of it. But as we're in the world, we are called to stand with those who suffer, to stand for those who are persecuted, for those who are crying, for those who are in despair. That should be the hallmark of the Christian, he said. And he said, when we are tempted by a horizon that may be filled with despair, it's the Holy Spirit in our hearts that helps us see beyond that, to help us see what the Lord is preparing for us.
Mary Shovlin, EWTN News Nightly Vatican correspondent. Thanks for joining us, Mary.
Thank you.
Coming up, states battle abortion laws. The Dirty Dozen revealed, a new report on sexual exploitation. Catholic bishops in Virginia respond to the governor's veto of a bill defunding Planned Parenthood. The statement reads in part, the Virginia Catholic Conference upholds the timeless truth that every human being, born and unborn, has an equal right to life. The conference finds Governor McAuliffe's pride in protecting an organization that destroys life and harms women and their families deeply offensive. A federal judge in Texas decides that Planned Parenthood gets to keep its Medicaid money. He says the state of Texas did not provide any evidence of wrongdoing by the abortion provider. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton says Planned Parenthood traffics in human body parts from aborted babies, and that the judge's ruling flies in the face of basic human decency.
Planned Parenthood does not need government money to operate, and the market doesn't need government money to provide whatever services women want. We're hopeful that the Court of Appeals will review this and consider the evidence of the video.
Paxton, referring to the undercover video shot by the Center for Medical Progress, it captured Planned Parenthood employees discussing the selling of body parts from aborted babies. Paxton said he plans to appeal the ruling to the Fifth Circuit Court. The National Center on Sexual Exploitation announces its Dirty Dozen list. It's a list of companies they say profit from or perpetrate sexual exploitation, including the American Library Association, Amazon, and HBO. Dawn Hawkins, Executive Director of the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, joins us now. Dawn, welcome to the program.
Hi there.
You just announced this list at 1 o'clock today. What's the criteria? How did these different organizations get on this list?
So we've identified that mainstream companies that many of us trust and use are very much involved in the facilitation and profiting from sexual exploitation. So we've gone industry by industry and tried to expose their involvement.
The largest of it. All right, so we've showed a list. Maybe we could put that list back up. We've showed the list of all of the different ones, and we've mentioned some of them. Who is new to the list this year? Here we go. So some of them are Amazon, Amnesty International, Backpage, and Cosmopolitan Magazine, Snapchat, Roku.
So Roku is a new target this year. We found that Roku is a media streaming device, kind of like Apple TV or Amazon's Fire TV, except Roku is the only device that allows pornographic channels to also be streamed to the television. They have hundreds of these type of channels.
Others, Comcast, EBSCO, Roku, Twitter, as we're putting it up on there. Who is new to the list this year?
So in addition to Roku, EBSCO International Services is the one that I think is really the biggest scandal that we've ever uncovered.
Why?
Because this is a company that provides online database services to schools K through 12. Many schools are subscribing to these products, and we found that these products are categorically filled with pornography, with sexually explicit content, and with advice to engage in risky sexual behaviors. And this is to like elementary and middle school kids.
And that could be blocked, right? I'm really dying to get to this point where you have actually changed corporations.
Well,
Verizon moved from the Dirty Dozen list to the watch list. Why did that happen? What happened?
Yes, well, thanks to the pressure of the public, the media, so many people contacting Verizon. They met with us last year, the CEO, and then they told us that this year they were adopting a new policy for new customers to basically block out any pornography channels through their Fios TV.
So if you call and you're getting now Verizon, you say, I want to sign up for Verizon Fios, you don't get porn.
You don't get pornography. You
unless
have to
you verbally say,
physically
I want it.
So they're still profiting from pornography and exploitation exploitation, but they have taken a step forward and they're willing to kind of work with us, and the dialogue is open, which is why they're
on the watch list. Tell me about some other victories that you've had.
Well, the one I mentioned, EBSCO, earlier, they called us last night saying, please don't put us on the Dirty Dozen list. We don't want to be with the ilks of Backpage.com. We want to fix things, and they promised that they are already undertaking steps to improve their services. We got Google, for example, to also change.
And how did you get Google, the big giant, to change?
I feel like if we can change a big internet giant, we can change
you can do anything, right?
Yeah. So Google invited us to also meet with them after a lot of public pressure, and they got rid of all apps in Google Play for the phones and tablets that were explicit, and they also stopped all pornographic ads and explicit ads that often pop up. I mean, we've heard from so many kids that they're just looking innocently, and these ads are popping up.
Right. I have children, and yes, I do worry about that. I've seen it, and I'm trying to hit the delete button or the backspace button. So what amazing work you're doing. Thank you so much. Dawn Hawkins, Executive Director of the National Center on Sexual Exploitation. Up next, EWTN senior contributor Matthew Bunson shares the church's reasoning behind today's feast day. Out of this world, scientists make a new discovery. Today is the feast of the Chair of St. Peter, dating back to the 4th century. It's a day to give thanks to God for the mission entrusted to the Apostle Peter. An ancient tradition holds that St. Peter himself sat upon it during sermons. It can be seen from the entryway in St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, and it is enclosed in a gilt bronze casing designed by the great Gian Lorenzo Bernini. Joining us now to explain why there is a feast day for a chair is Matthew Bunson, EWTN senior contributor. Welcome back to the show.
Good to be with you.
All right, tell us, why is there a feast day for a chair?
Well, pilgrims who make their way into St. Peter's Basilica are always astonished to discover that there's somewhere called the altar of the chair. And as they reflect on this spiritually, what they discover is that the chair, the relic of the chair, actually points us to something much more important. And on this feast of the chair of St. Peter, we reflect on the office of Peter, on the office of the popes, the infallibility that they bring with them, and faith and morals, and as a source of unity for the church.
Let's take a look at the reading today. In Matthew chapter 16, it says, "And so I say to you, you are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of the netherworld shall not prevail against it." Does this relate to infallibility, to the chair itself physically?
It does. The office of Peter, the chair of Peter, and all of his successors received from Christ the keys to the kingdom, the keys to the gates of the netherworld, as you say. What it means is that they are the focus of unity in the church. They are universal pastors. They preside in charity over the church in a ministry of service and of love, but also one of authority.
Tell me about the altar.
Yeah, well, the altar, as created by Gian Lorenzo Bernini, was intended to pass along a very powerful theological statement. We have this chair almost floating in midair, surrounded by great statues of 4 of the doctors and fathers of the church from the East and the West. In other words, the Pope is supported by the bishops of the church. And then surrounded by angels of the spiritual power. And then above the chair is this magnificent window of the Holy Spirit, the light coming through, guaranteeing that the Holy Spirit is guiding the church over the passage of time.
And just for those of us who can't get to Rome, how can we honor this feast day today?
Well, first, read the passage that you just read, and also pray for the Pope, pray for the office of Peter. It is an immense responsibility. 1 billion souls are in his care, and the spiritual care of the whole world is given to him by Christ. Pray for the Pope. Francis asked us to do that just this morning.
Just this morning, he did. Thank you so much, Matthew Bunson, EWTN senior contributor.
Good to be with you.
It seems God might have been a little more busy than the book of Genesis describes. Astronomers have discovered 7 Earth-sized planets orbiting a nearby star, the first revelation of its kind. NASA believes these new worlds could hold life. Don't hold your breath waiting for your chance to visit, however. The cluster is almost 40 light years away. That does it for all of us here at EWTN News Nightly. To all of you around the world, thank you for joining us. I'm Lauren Ashburn. And don't forget, you can see every broadcast of the show on EWTN's YouTube channel. We leave you tonight with a view of the Supreme Court here in Washington, D.C., where the president's daughter came today to watch court proceedings. Good night, and God bless.